The notification arrived at 3:07 a.m. It wasn't a standard YouTube notification. No bright red bell, no familiar subscriber count. It was a cryptic system alert pushed directly to the dusty, dedicated laptop Alex used exclusively for his channel. Midnight Manor. Alex ran the most successful, most controversial paranormal investigation channel on YouTube, raking in millions of views by sticking to a single, ironclad rule: never fake a single frame. While competitors staged shadowy figures and audio glitches, Alex only uploaded what the cameras genuinely captured in the genuinely most haunted places in the US. His current project was the infamous Blackwood Sanitarium, a sprawling, derelict fortress rumored to have housed unspeakable experiments in the 1960s. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and squinted at the screen. The alert was from an unknown sender, titled, "Urgent Data Correction for Blackwood Sanitarium Archive." The body of the message was a single link and a single instruction: "You are wrong about the missing patient 7. Check the attached. You must use the footage in your next upload." Alex scoffed, half annoyed, half intrigued. Trolls were common, but this felt different. Professional. The link led not to a file-sharing site, but to a private, encrypted cloud drive. He typed in the provided 4-digit key, 1963. A single file downloaded instantly. It was a video, timestamped 1963-10-3102:47:12. The footage was shockingly clear. It looked like it was shot yesterday, not 60 years ago. It was a static shot of a room Alex knew intimately, the sanitarium's observation ward, where he had spent 3 nights and captured nothing but dust. In the center of the frame was a worn, antique rocking chair. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Alex almost closed the file, ready to dismiss it as a high-effort prank. Then, the chair started to move, slowly, gently, like an invisible hand had just pushed it. Squeak. Squeak. Alex leaned closer, his heart starting the familiar, unwelcome thrumming of genuine fear. This wasn't a draft. The room was airtight. Then, he noticed the detail that made his blood run cold. In the upper right corner of the screen, just above where the wall met the ceiling, was a small, perfectly square patch of wallpaper that was missing. He knew that spot. In the real Blackwood Sanitarium, that specific spot was covered by a framed, slightly crooked lithograph. Someone had filmed this before the lithograph was hung. This was not modern footage. The rocking chair stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, a sound, a choked, wet inhale, came from directly behind the chair. A shadow began to bloom on the wall. Not the shadow of a human, but a towering, distorted silhouette that looked like a cross between a spider and a praying mantis, with long, needle-thin limbs. It didn't belong to anything in the room. It was the shadow of something outside the frame. Alex's breath hitched. He had seen shadows, orbs, and heard EVPs. He had never seen something this undeniable, this solid, yet unseen. The creature's shadow paused, looming over the chair. Then, a whisper, so close to the microphone it sounded like it was in Alex's own ear, cut through the silence. It wasn't static or a ghost voice. It was a clear, human articulation, laced with pure, desperate terror. It knows I saw the door." The shadow lunged. The camera jolted violently, the screen filling with static for a heartbeat. When the picture cleared, the room was empty. The rocking chair was still. The air was dead. Alex stared at the time counter, 07:01. He slammed the laptop shut, his hands shaking so hard he had to steady them on the desk. This was the most terrifying, most authentic piece of paranormal evidence he had ever encountered. It was also a direct challenge. That night, Alex uploaded his new video. Blackwood Sanitarium, the real patient 7 footage, never before seen. The views exploded. Comments poured in, a torrent of disbelief and abject horror. The video was a monumental success. He received a second, shorter message from the unknown sender 3 hours later. "Thank you for sharing the truth. They are watching now. When you see the door, do not open it. Do not let them whisper the name." Alex felt a cold dread settle deep in his gut. They are watching now. He hadn't just uploaded a video. He had joined a network. A deadly, hidden network. The following morning, Alex walked into his kitchen and stopped dead on his refrigerator. A magnet held a single, ordinary postcard. He hadn't received mail in days. The image on the postcard was a faded, black and white photo of a door. It was an impossible door. A door with no frame, no hinges, and no handle. It looked like a black smear pressed into the wall. And beneath the image, someone, or something, had written in shaky, barely legible script. The whispers start when you look away. Alex looked around his empty apartment, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. He hadn't looked away from the postcard since he first saw it. And yet, somewhere in the silence of his apartment, he could hear it, faintly, like sand scraping against glass, the unmistakable, terrifying sound of a rocking chair starting to move. Alex didn't move. His eyes were glued to the impossible postcard on the fridge. The rocking sound was faint, a dry, rhythmic squeak creak that seemed to defy acoustic physics. It wasn't coming from a direction, but rather from the air itself, oscillating in his eardrums. He finally wrenched his gaze away from the postcard, spinning around to scan the kitchen. Nothing. The space was bright, sterile, and ordinary. No rocking chair. No shadows. But the sound didn't stop. It followed his movement, growing slightly louder, closer. Squeak. Creak. Alex snatched the postcard off the fridge. It felt cold, oddly heavy. He flipped it over. The sender address was blurred ink, illegible. He returned to his laptop, the chilling urgency of the unknown sender's final warning echoing in his mind. When you see the door, do not open it. Do not let them whisper the name. He uploaded a short, unlisted video to his channel, a quick clip of the rocking chair sound he recorded on his phone, asking his anonymous contact if this was part of the package. The response was instantaneous, arriving as a text on his phone from an unregistered number. You are listening to the echo. They are trying to find the point of entry. You must look for the marker. The marker? Alex muttered, pacing his apartment, the rocking noise now a persistent, unnerving metronome in the background. He pulled up the original 1963 footage again. He slowed it down. He focused on the moment the shadow lunged. He saw the flicker of static, the return to the empty room. He played it frame by frame. Frame 1230, shadow lunging. Frame 1231, static. Frame 1232, room empty. Wait. Alex leaned in, his nose almost touching the screen. In frame 1232, on the wooden floorboards, directly where the rocking chair had stood, there was a tiny, faint, almost imperceptible smudge of red. He zoomed in. It wasn't blood. It looked like a chalk line, quickly drawn and immediately wiped away. A symbol. It was a small, crudely drawn circle with a single, horizontal line cutting through the middle. Circled minus. Alex grabbed his backpack and keys. He knew exactly where he had to go. The Blackwood Sanitarium was 20 miles outside the city, hidden deep in a neglected state park. He bypassed the rusted main gates, using the secret gap in the chain-link fence he'd found on his previous trip. He moved quickly through the dust and decay, the air inside the sanitarium tasting of mold and history. He didn't need a flashlight. The late morning sun slanted through the shattered windows, illuminating the main hall in a sickly yellow-gray light. He found the observation ward. The room was just as he'd left it, dusty, cold, and utterly mundane. He walked straight to the center of the room, to the spot where the rocking chair would have been. He dropped to his knees, ignoring the grit and debris. He didn't need to search long. There, precisely where the faint smudge was in the video, etched into the ancient, splintered wood of the floorboard, was the exact same symbol, circle minus. It wasn't chalk. It was deep, deliberately carved. And it wasn't old. The wood inside the groove was too light, too fresh. Someone had been here after he had uploaded the video. As Alex traced the symbol with his finger, the sound of the rocking chair, which had faded during his drive, returned. But this time, it was not faint. It was loud. Immediate. Squeak, creak, squeak, creak. It sounded like it was right behind the heavy, sealed steel door leading into the adjacent therapy suite. Alex stood up slowly, reaching for the professional audio recorder clipped to his belt. He couldn't see anything, but the air in the room had dropped 20 degrees. He could see his own breath. A voice, low and dry, like old leaves dragged across pavement, hissed from behind the steel door. It was distorted and multilayered, as if a chorus of dead throats were trying to speak at once. He looked at the door. Alex froze. This was not an EVP. This was a coherent, physical sound pressure hitting his eardrums. He saw the door mentioned in the whisper, the black, impossible smear on the postcard, in his mind's eye. And he knew, with chilling certainty, that the door was not on a wall in the sanitarium. The door was on the other side of that steel door. The voices from the therapy suite multiplied, becoming a chaotic, unintelligible babble. The rocking noise reached a fever pitch, rattling the glass in the windows. Then, one voice, clear and cold, cut through the noise, whispering directly into Alex's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. Alex, give us the name. He stumbled back, hitting the wall. They knew his name. He heard a metallic thud from the other side of the steel door, followed by the sickening sound of something large, heavy, and wet being dragged across the concrete floor. Alex turned and ran, not stopping until he was back in his car, tearing down the park road. As he drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror. High up, in one of the shattered windows of the observation ward, he saw a fleeting image, the silhouette of a tall, thin figure standing perfectly still. The figure wasn't looking at the car. It was holding its hands pressed firmly over its ears. Alex received another text the moment he hit the main highway. The circled minus is a trap. You showed them the room. The entity from the video is outside the door now. You must find the person who carved the marker before they do. They will be the next upload. He checked his email. A new message had arrived from the anonymous sender, containing a single attachment, a grainy, black and white photograph of a young woman with terrified eyes. The subject line read, "The chalk line ghost. Coordinates. Attached. Go now." Alex was driving on pure adrenaline and cold logic. The image of the terrified woman, the chalk line ghost, was pulled up on his phone, glowing in the dim light of his dashboard. The coordinates led him 200 miles north to a small, forgotten town in upstate New York called Arkham's Peak, a place he'd never heard of. The attached photo of the woman was unnerving. It wasn't a selfie or a casual snapshot. It looked like a mugshot, or maybe a photo taken by a secret surveillance camera, capturing the moment pure dread washed over her face. He pulled into Arkham's Peak just before midnight. The coordinates pointed to a nondescript, two-story house with peeling white paint and a perpetually dark porch light. He parked half a block away and approached the house on foot. The air here was heavy and still, smelling faintly of pine and something metallic. As he reached the porch, he saw the first sign that this was the right place. Scratched into the weathered wood of the front door, almost invisible in the dark, was the same symbol, the circle with the line through it, circled minus. The marker. He pressed the doorbell. Silence. He knocked. A solid, authoritative rap. The door creaked open slightly, held by a safety chain. A woman's eye, exactly the eye from the photo, peered out at him. She looked exhausted, her face streaked with dry tears. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice raw. "My name is Alex. I run Midnight Manor," he said, holding up his ID briefly. "I think you sent me footage from the Blackwood Sanitarium. And I think you know about the door." Her terrified eyes widened further, not in recognition of his channel, but in pure confirmation of his words. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, pulling the door shut so violently the latch rattled. "Wait." Alex pressed his shoulder against the door. "They're coming for you. They whispered my name at Blackwood. They know I looked at the circled minus marker. You're the one who carved it. You're the next upload. You have to talk to me." Silence. Then, the woman's voice, small and desperate. "The whispers started here. My name is Evelyn. I didn't send you anything. I've been trying to hide the door, not show it off. Then who sent me the footage? Who sent me your picture and coordinates? The network, Evelyn said, her voice shaking. It's the only way they communicate. I looked at the wrong upload 6 months ago. Now I'm marked. The network uses people like us, people who looked at the door, to warn the next target. Alex felt a cold wave of understanding. His anonymous contact wasn't a person helping him. It was the system, the entity that connected the victims. The network used the marked people's data to spread the dread and recruit the next one. He was the new hub. Evelyn was the compromised node. Who are they? Alex demanded. The things that come when you know the door is there. They don't have bodies, she whispered, her voice catching. They are names. They want you to say their names out loud. That's how they find the entry point. Did you see the shadow? The creature from the video? I saw the shadow of the door itself. It's what drove me to carve the marker. The symbol protects you from the door's direct gaze, but not the entities it lets through. Suddenly, the rocking chair sound was back. Closer than it had ever been. It was no longer a gentle squeak creak. It was a violent, frantic clack thump, as if the chair was slamming itself against the wall. Evelyn gasped and looked past Alex, her eyes wide with mounting horror. It's here, she whispered. It followed you. Alex spun around. The street was empty. Clack thump. The sound was coming from inside the house now. From the floor above. Evelyn threw the door open, pulling Alex inside and slamming the heavy wood shut, bolting it frantically. The attic! That's where the whispers start, she cried, dragging him toward a narrow hallway. They want the name! If you see the shadow, don't look up, Alex! You must not look up! They reached the staircase. The sound of the rocking chair had stopped. The silence was worse. From the top of the stairs, a voice, deep and resonant, began to speak. It wasn't the multi-layered hissing from the sanitarium. This voice was slow, articulate, and dangerously persuasive. It was the voice of a gentle father, a comforting figure. My children, they have been trying to tell you something, a secret of the space between the walls. Evelyn froze on the first step, her face pale. It's using a new voice. I haven't heard this one before, she whimpered. The voice continued, floating down the dark stairwell. The door leads to the only way out, Evelyn. All you have to do is say the one word. The word that unlocks the peace. The name of the first one who looked. Alex grabbed Evelyn's arm, pulling her back. Don't listen to it. What is the name? What is it trying to make you say? Evelyn's eyes were glassy, fixed on the darkness at the top of the stairs. She was in a trance. It's a whisper, it's just... She choked out, her lips forming the shape of a single, soft consonant. Alex shook her violently. No! Don't say it! Suddenly a massive, wet slam came from the attic, shaking the entire house. A single object rolled down the stairs and clattered to a stop at their feet. It was a small, dusty teddy bear, its button eyes missing, and across its plush, worn chest, someone had drawn the circle minus marker in dark, fresh red marker pen. Alex looked up at the attic door. The soft, gentle voice was gone. In its place, a sound of absolute, frantic ecstasy, the sound of something gorging itself. Evelyn screamed, a short, sharp sound of realization, and then she clamped her hands over her mouth, pulling Alex back into the living room. It knows the symbol won't save me anymore, she sobbed. I touched the door on the postcard. I touched the entry point. She frantically opened a closet and pulled out a battered metal lockbox. You have to take this. It's the only real footage. The original. It shows what happened after the shadow lunged. It shows the name of the entity, Alex. You need to upload it, or the network will keep moving closer to you. You're the last chance. She shoved the lockbox into his hands. Go! Now! Before the door opens! As Alex bolted for the front door, he heard a new, terrifying sound from the attic. Not a whisper. Not a rocking chair. The unmistakable, heavy scrape of metal against wood, as if someone, or something, was slowly and deliberately prying the attic door open from the inside. Alex burst out of Evelyn's house, the heavy metal lockbox clutched in his hands. Behind him, the sound of splintering wood and a high-pitched, triumphant shriek erupted from the attic, a sound of absolute, predatory satisfaction. He didn't look back. He flung himself into his car, tires screeching as he sped away from Arkham's Peak. The rocking chair sound was gone, replaced by a dense, suffocating silence in the car. He knew that silence was the sound of a successful hunt. Evelyn was no longer a target. She was now part of the echo. He drove until sunrise, pulling over at a roadside diner far from any small towns. He needed to examine the lockbox. The box was old and heavy, sealed by a simple 3-digit combination lock. He tried the number Evelyn had whispered just before the entity's voice started to fade. 196. It didn't work. He remembered the most crucial piece of data he possessed. The timestamp from the original footage, October 31st, 1963, 2:47 and 12 seconds. He tried the year and the date, 1963. The lock clicked open. Inside, there was no hard drive or flash card. There was a single, old-fashioned Super 8 film reel, wrapped tightly in plastic and labeled with the same ominous symbol, circled minus. Alex cursed. He didn't own a Super 8 projector. He needed a way to digitize this film, and quickly. He searched Google for local vintage camera shops. There was one, 70 miles away, that advertised same-day film digitization. 3 hours later, Alex was sitting in the dimly lit back office of Kodak's Past, watching the ancient film sputter through a bulky machine. The owner, an old man with thick glasses and ink-stained fingers, was oblivious, humming to himself. The digitized footage appeared on Alex's laptop screen. It was grainy, flickering, and clearly the continuation of the file he'd uploaded. It began right after the static burst in the observation ward. The image was back, but now the camera was lying on its side. Alex recognized the view, the floorboards, the corner of the wall, and the spot where the rocking chair had been. In the first few frames, a pair of worn leather shoes, Patient 7 shoes, were visible, being dragged slowly out of the frame toward the steel door of the therapy suite. Then, the focus shifted to the wall. The shadow was gone, but something worse remained. The wall itself. Where the small patch of wallpaper was missing, the plaster beneath looked soft. It pulsed faintly, a dull red-brown light. And slowly, agonizingly, a hairline crack began to form in the plaster. The crack wasn't random. It was forming the shape of a door. A perfect black smear with no edges, no depth, just absolute negative space. The impossible door from Evelyn's postcard was forming in real time. The camera's internal audio picked up a new sound. Not a whisper, but a resonant, deep humming. The humming was singing a name. It was only one syllable, repeated over and over, growing louder as the door's shape finalized. ZHK. 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 Alex leaned forward, scribbling the sound down on a notepad. ZHK. He knew this was the name the entity wanted them to speak. The name Evelyn had almost uttered. Then, a third element entered the frame, a small hand, shaking violently, covered in what looked like red marker ink. It belonged to Patient 7. The hand, with the last of its strength, desperately scraped the circle minus symbol onto the floorboard, right where the chair had been. An act of defiance. A warning. The black door shape fully solidified. It looked like a void. And from that void, a true whisper emerged, not the corrupted voice from the sanitarium, but a voice like glass shards falling onto velvet. It was purely seductive, designed to lure. Speak my name, little one. Speak it, and you will see the next door. The small hand went limp. The humming stopped. The black door vanished, the plaster smoothing over as if nothing had ever happened. The final frame of the film focused on the missing lithograph spot. And for a split second, before the reel ran out, a tiny, fresh piece of white paper was visible, taped to the wall. It contained one word. Whisper. Alex yanked the laptop away from the digitizing machine, his mind reeling. ZHK was the name. The circled minus was the shield. And the entity was calling itself Whisper. He was about to close his laptop when a notification popped up. It wasn't YouTube. It was a private message on his anonymous contact list, the one the network used. The sender was listed as Evelyn New Echo. The message: I spoke the name. I spoke ZHK. It is better here. The next door is waiting for you in the Whisper room. You must find the person who saw the word. The lithograph is a lie. The word is the key. Alex looked at the empty Super 8 reel. Evelyn was gone, consumed, and instantly repurposed as part of the network to lure him further. He had the name, ZHK. He had the key, Whisper. He had one horrifying advantage. He knew the one thing the network was trying to prevent. He knew the name they wanted him to say, and now he knew the name they were trying to stop him from finding. He looked back at the original footage's metadata. The file he uploaded was sent by someone at Blackwood Sanitarium in 1963. He had to find the camera operator, the only other person who saw the door open and survived the initial encounter. He ran a cross-reference search on Blackwood Sanitarium staff 1963. One name returned, Dr. Alastair Thorne. As he drove away, Alex noticed the reflection in the diner's window. The reflection looked back at him, still and pale. But taped to the reflection of the window, on the outside where there was nothing in reality, was a small, crudely drawn circle with a line through it. He was still marked. And the circled minus was now appearing in the real world, not just the haunted one. Alex drove directly to the National Archives in D.C., using his fame and a fabricated story about a historical documentary to gain access to the classified personnel files of the defunct Blackwood Sanitarium. He located the file for Dr. Alastair Thorne. Thorne was a junior resident physician in 1963, specializing in experimental electroshock therapy. The file notes indicated that he was the last person to officially report seeing Patient 7 alive and was quickly transferred out of Blackwood shortly after the incident. The file contained a final, chilling entry. Dr. Thorne was committed to a private facility in Vermont in 1967 after a catatonic breakdown characterized by acute self-mutilation and total refusal to speak. The name of the facility, the Greenlee Retreat. Alex made the drive in a desperate rush, the knowledge of the name ZHK burning in his mind. He was looking for the one man who had first-hand knowledge of the entity and its method of entry. The Greenlee Retreat was not the stereotypical, crumbling asylum. It was an exclusive, pristine, and very expensive facility nestled deep in the snowy Vermont woods. Alex presented himself as a distant relative, citing a recently deceased cousin. The head nurse, a stern woman named Ms. Finch, granted him limited access. Dr. Alastair Thorne was housed in the extreme isolation ward. He found Thorne in a small, padded white room. Thorne was an old man now, thin and frail, sitting cross-legged in the center of the room. His eyes were open, unfocused, staring at a spot on the wall above Alex's head. The most disturbing detail was not his catatonia, but his hands. They were encased in thick, specially made leather mitts, strapped securely to his wrists. The file had mentioned self-mutilation. Alex pulled a chair close, speaking softly. Dr. Thorne. My name is Alex. I saw the footage. Patient 7. The door. No reaction. Thorne's gaze remained fixed. Alex knew he had to break the seal of silence. He pulled out the postcard with the impossible black door. He showed him the photograph of Evelyn. He showed him the symbol, circle minus. Thorne's breathing remained shallow, but the slightest flicker, a micro-movement in his lower eyelid, told Alex he was listening. The entity, the thing that took patient 7. Alex pressed. It has a name. It wants us to say it. ZHK. 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 As Alex spoke the syllables, the air in the sterile room grew thick. The lights seemed to dim, and the humming, the low, resonant, seductive sound from the Super 8 film, began to emanate from the walls. Thorne's body twitched violently. He let out a low, strangled noise, his catatonia finally broken by pure terror. He tried to pull his hands free from the mitts, thrashing against the restraints. Alex ignored the humming and the frantic noise. He leaned in close to Thorn's ear. It wants us to say its name. But what is its real name? What did you see written on the wall? The word they don't want us to find. The word that stops the whispers. Thorn finally focused his gaze on Alex, his eyes wide and filled with a lifetime of trapped horror. He looked past Alex's shoulder, toward the far wall. The humming reached a deafening crescendo. Thorn opened his mouth, his throat working violently against the years of silence. He could only produce a cracked, desperate, nonverbal sound. He couldn't speak. He had silenced himself to survive. With a superhuman effort, Thorn managed to lift his heavily mittened right hand. He slammed the padded leather against the white wall, once, twice, 3 times. Thud. 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 He was trying to write the word. He was trying to draw the KEY.MS. Finch, alerted by the noise, burst into the room with 2 orderlies. That's enough, she snapped. Visitors are not to agitate the patients. As the orderlies pulled Alex away, Thorn slammed his mittened hand against the wall one last time, with a final, heartbreaking effort. Alex was dragged out of the room, but he stared back at the padded wall. There was no visible mark. But etched into the white padding, where Thorn's final slam landed, was a tiny, faint impression, a deep crease in the fiber, left by the strap buckle on Thorn's leather mitt. It was the outline of a perfect, small W. The full word had been whisper. The name of the entity that connected the targets. The word that patient 7 had left on the wall. It wasn't just a label. It was the key. Alex was physically thrown out of the retreat. He checked his phone. No messages from the network. The silence was the real threat. He had spoken the forbidden name ZHK, and now the network was focused entirely on him. He knew what he had to do. He had to use his platform against the very thing that created it. He drove to the nearest secure location, a hotel room, and set up his camera. He uploaded a new, unlisted video to his channel, containing the footage of the black door forming, the hum of the entity, and the circle minus marker. He titled it, Evelyn's Warning, Do Not Say the Name ZHK. He received an immediate reply, not from the network, but from an entirely new source. A comment on the unlisted video. It was a single, cryptic sentence. The whisper is the lock. The name is the key. You have them reversed. You open the door for ZHK. Now, ZHK will show you the original name. Look outside. Alex looked through the peephole of his hotel room. Taped to the outside of the door, completely covering the brass peephole, was a small, crudely drawn circle with a line through it. Circled minus. And in the carpet of the hallway outside, illuminated by the harsh overhead light, Alex saw it. A single antique rocking chair, sitting perfectly still, directly in front of his door. It wasn't rocking. But deep, guttural hissing came from behind the chair, not from the seat. The whisper room is waiting, Alex. The whisper room is waiting. He was trapped. He was the next upload. Alex stumbled backward from the hotel room door, adrenaline flooding his system. The rocking chair was real, tangible, and sitting just 3 feet away on the other side of the wood. The circle minus symbol was taped over the peephole, a mocking seal. The hissing from behind the chair was low and constant. It wasn't whispering. It was a pressurized leak of sound. Alex's mind raced, fixated on the comment on his unlisted video. The whisper is the lock. The name is the key. You have them reversed. He had focused on stopping people from saying ZHK, the name, the key that opens the door. But if whisper was the lock, then speaking that word should theoretically close the entry point. He had to test the theory. He had to say the word out loud. Alex stood in the center of the hotel room, his voice strained but steady. Whisper, he said. The hissing immediately changed. It became agitated, louder, sharper. It sounded like fingernails scraping over chalkboard, rejecting the sound. The rocking chair remained still. He repeated it, louder this time, infusing it with authority. Whisper! The lock is closed. The hissing momentarily stopped. The silence that followed was heavy and instant. Alex could hear his own heartbeat. Then, a sound that made his stomach drop, the faint, metallic clink of the safety chain on his door being unlatched. The entity wasn't repelled. It was attracted to the sound. He had just unlocked the door. A thin, dark gap appeared as the door began to pull inward, revealing a sliver of the rocking chair. He snatched the heaviest object he could find, the hotel room Bible, and hurled it at the door, slamming it shut. Alex backed away, panting. The chair was now rocking violently, slamming against the door with sickening force. He realized the core truth of the network. They didn't want him to share the footage of the black door. They wanted him to understand the mechanism of the door. He pulled up the last part of Evelyn's message. You open the door for ZHK. Now, ZHK will show you the original name. The original name. Not ZHK, the key. Not Whisper, the lock. But the name of the very first entity that started the network. The source. He needed to find the original location of the word whisper that patient 7 had left. He knew it was the observation ward taped over the spot where the lithograph would eventually hang. He had to return to Blackwood. Alex drove all night, ignoring the constant stream of network messages that flooded his phone, dozens of new, echo, accounts, each sending a variation of, "The rocker is waiting. ZHK is here." He reached Blackwood Sanitarium at dawn. He moved straight to the observation ward. The room was unchanged, still and dusty. The circle minus marker was still faintly visible on the floorboards. He walked to the corner where the wall met the ceiling. He pulled a folding step stool from his bag and climbed up to the missing lithograph spot. He carefully ran his hands over the plaster. It was dry, cold, and solid. The small patch of wallpaper was still missing, but there was no paper, tape, or residue. Patient 7's message had been removed decades ago. He was about to climb down, defeated, when his flashlight beam caught something tucked into the narrow gap between the wall and the ceiling trim. It was a brittle, yellowed shard of paper. He gently pulled it out. It was the original piece of paper patient 7 had taped to the wall. The word whisper was written on it in faded pencil. But there was more. The paper had been folded tightly, and when Alex smoothed it out, he saw that the paper was actually a tiny, crude map. It was a blueprint of the Blackwood Sanitarium's ventilation system, drawn by hand. One specific air duct was circled multiple times in red marker. It led from the observation ward directly to a small, isolated room beneath the main floor. The room was labeled simply, the Silence Room. Alex knew from the sanitarium's files that the Silence Room was where they placed patients who exhibited acute auditory hallucinations, patients who could not stop hearing voices. He realized the horrifying truth. The whispers weren't just in the room. They traveled through the ducts. He rushed to the therapy suite door, the one ZHK had been behind. He found the access panel to the main ventilation shaft and pried it open. The dark, narrow shaft dropped straight down. He slid down the shaft, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of copper. He landed hard in the small, concrete silence room. The room was featureless, padded on all sides with thick, sound-dampening insulation, designed to keep sound in or out, and in the very center of the floor, sitting perfectly still, was the very same antique rocking chair that had been outside his hotel room. It was real. It was waiting. Alex didn't look at the chair. He looked at the wall. The padding was old, torn in places. In the center of the far wall, the padding was completely ripped away, revealing the raw concrete beneath. And etched deeply into the concrete, not in a crude symbol but in elegant, flowing script, was a single, long name. The name Patient 7 had been forbidden to speak, the original name the entity had hidden for decades. It was not ZHK. It was Ludwig. As Alex read the name, the rocking chair began to move. Violently. But it wasn't a spectral push. A tall, spindly figure, draped entirely in dark shadows, detached itself from the back of the chair. It was the creature from the 1963 footage. The creature bent its needle-thin head toward Alex, and a clear, gentle voice, full of ancient longing, echoed from its unseen mouth. Ludwig. Say my name, Alex. Ludwig. Alex knew that ZHK was the key to opening the door for the network. But Ludwig was the master key, the name that would grant the true source full physical entry into his world. He clutched the piece of paper in his hand, the one with the word whisper on it. He spoke the word, not as a lock, but as an act of absolute defiance against the creature standing 3 feet away. "Whisper!" The spindly creature shrieked, a sound of pure agony, and recoiled backward, melting instantly back into the shadows of the chair. Alex had bought himself a second. He knew the name Ludwig was now loose in the network. He had to upload this. He had to share the source name and the counter word. He had to destroy the network by flooding it with light. He turned to scramble back up the ventilation shaft. But the rocking chair was no longer empty. Sitting in the seat, facing the wall and rocking gently, was the skeletal, withered body of Evelyn. And in her hand she held the tiny piece of paper with the word "whisper" on it. She slowly turned her neck, making a wet, cracking sound, and looked at Alex. Her eyes were solid black. In her dead voice, she whispered, "The network always wins, Alex. You gave us the name. Now we take the word." She tore the paper in half. The sound of the paper tearing was sickeningly loud in the confined space of the silence room. Evelyn's black eyes locked onto Alex. "You gave us Ludwig," she hissed, her voice a chorus of dry, clicking bones. "The network needed the master key. CHK was just a distraction. Thank you, Alex." Alex's focus was singular, the ventilation shaft. He lunged for the opening, scrambling backward away from Evelyn and the chair. Evelyn didn't move from the rocking chair. She merely raised a skeletal finger, pointing at the opposite padded wall. "You can't leave," she whispered. "Ludwig is here now. And he brought your first echo." Alex looked where she pointed. The sound-dampening foam of the padded wall began to indent inward, slowly and deeply, as if something massive was pressing against it from the outside. Then, a voice, soft and deeply familiar, spoke from inside the wall, muffled by the padding. "Alex, come out. We have so much to record." It was Alex's own voice. The voice of his YouTube channel, charismatic and slightly breathless with anticipation. The voice of his brand. The padding tore open, revealing a distorted, shadow-draped figure that looked exactly like Alex. Same height, same clothes, but its eyes were solid white and it held a professional-grade camera, aimed directly at him. The Doppelganger. "My name is Alex," the figure said, stepping into the silence room. "But I am Alex when the door is open. I am the host." Alex realized the network's endgame. They didn't just want a victim, they wanted a vessel. They wanted control of the most popular paranormal channel on the internet. "You won't get my platform," Alex growled, backing further into the corner, grabbing the small folding step stool. The Doppelganger didn't react to the threat. "The platform is the entry point for the world. You've done such good work, Alex. Millions of eyes are now connected to the whispers. All we need is to whisper Ludwig in the next video, and the network goes global." The Doppelganger raised the camera. "Smile, Alex. We're going live." The instant the recording light on the camera turned red, Evelyn began to rock violently in the chair. The spindle creature, Ludwig, detached itself from the shadows and lunged at the Doppelganger. The Doppelganger shrieked, dropping the camera. "Stop! He is the host!" Ludwig ignored it. The creature wasn't attacking Alex. It was attacking the camera. It slammed its spindly limbs into the recording device, crushing the lens and the internal memory with a sickening crunch. Alex understood. The network wanted the footage distributed, but they didn't want the evidence of the vessel takeover recorded. They needed control of the feed, not the memory of the room. The Doppelganger, enraged, turned its white eyes on Alex. "You interfered! You are the corruption!" Alex didn't hesitate. He lunged at the Doppelganger, slamming the folding step stool into its chest. The figure dissolved instantly into a cloud of cold, coppery smoke, which was immediately sucked into the narrow gap of the ventilation shaft. Evelyn stopped rocking. "You ruined the upload," she said, her voice mournful. "Now, the original source is coming." The entire silence room began to vibrate violently. The raw concrete wall where the name Ludwig was etched began to crack, the fissures spreading like lightning bolts. From the cracks, a sound emerged that was deeper than the humming and older than the hissing, the distinct, rhythmic sound of a heartbeat, muffled by stone. Thump thump. Thump thump. Ludwig is not the first name, Alex, Evelyn rasped, lifting the two torn pieces of paper. Ludwig is the first person to look away from the door. The paper was the warning. The whisper is the only thing that keeps the original entity silent. Alex scrambled back up the ventilation shaft just as the concrete wall finally gave way with a monstrous roar. He climbed out into the therapy suite, slammed the access panel shut, and ran through the empty halls of Blackwood. Alex reached his car and drove until he reached a secure, undisclosed military surplus bunker he used for emergencies. He needed to upload the full story before the network fully recovered. He set up his gear. He had no footage of the silence room, but he had the lockbox film, the name ZHK, the name Ludwig, and the warning word whisper. He began editing, compiling everything. He received a final, chilling message on his phone, from the last remaining Echo account. We have the name, Alex. Ludwig is loose. We have the word destroyed. You have nothing left. The network is complete. Now, watch the view count rise. Watch what the whispers do. Alex paused. He checked his channel. The video he had uploaded earlier. Evelyn's warning, do not say the name ZHK, which had been unlisted, now had over 15 million views. And the comments section was not filled with disbelief or horror. It was filled with hundreds of thousands of users repeating the same two words, over and over. ZHK. Ludwig. Alex felt a crushing realization. By trying to warn the world, he had simply given the network the mass audience it craved. The millions of eyes that saw the video were now the open door. He looked around his secure bunker. The metal walls were cold and featureless. Then, he saw a dot on the floor, just beneath the edge of his camera tripod. Someone had drawn the circled minus marker. It was drawn in faint white chalk, but the line was undeniable, and slowly, faintly, from the thick metal seams of the bunker walls, he heard the sound begin. Not a hiss, not a hum, and not a rock. It was the distinct, rhythmic sound of a heartbeat, getting louder with every pulse. Thump. 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 It was the original entity. It wasn't interested in a whisper or a key. It was interested in the physical presence of a heart that beat in rhythm with its own. Alex had to find the source of the heartbeat, and find the one thing he had missed. The true beginning of the whisper network. The rhythmic thump. 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 Of the entity's heartbeat was vibrating through the thick metal floor of the bunker. Alex dropped his editing mouse and scrambled back, his mind racing to find the missing variable. He had the names, ZHK, the key, and Ludwig, the conduit. He had the lock, whisper, now destroyed. He had the symbol, circle minus, the marker, now a lure. He had the vessel, his own channel, with 15 million active ears. He needed the one thing the network had been protecting since 1963, the source. The heartbeat was strongest directly beneath his camera tripod, on the spot marked with the circled minus symbol. He knelt down, pressing his ear to the cold steel floor. The rhythm was hypnotic, heavy, and sickeningly alive. He pulled up the Super 8 footage again, focusing on the moment patient 7 carved the circled minus symbol. He slowed the clip down until the motion was agonizingly slow. He noticed a detail he had missed, a detail so small it was almost accidental. When patient 7's hand moved away from the finished carving, a tiny, almost invisible piece of metallic dust flickered on the floorboard next to the symbol. It looked like a sliver of brass or copper. Alex had to trace patient 7's movements before the camera started rolling. The man was in the observation ward, placed there by Dr. Thorne. But where was patient 7 before Blackwood? He accessed the sanitarium's full patient archive via his hacked connection to the National Archives. Patient 7, classified. The main file was scrubbed. However, a secondary file listed his previous occupation, hospital maintenance engineer. Patient 7 had worked at Blackwood Sanitarium for 10 years before becoming a patient. His primary responsibility, the ventilation system and electrical wiring. Alex realized patient 7 didn't just stumble upon the entity in the observation ward. He knew about the silence room. He knew about the voices. Patient 7 was the one who installed the padding in the silence room. He was the one who contained the original entity. Alex looked down at the circle minus on the bunker floor. He grabbed a crowbar and slammed it into the steel plate. The metal groaned but held. He had to get to the source of the sound, and the only way to do that was to find the original conduit used by Patient 7, the one thing that connected the observation ward to the silence room, the ventilation system. Alex raced back to Blackwood Sanitarium, ignoring the dizzying pull of exhaustion. He returned to the therapy suite, prying open the ventilation panel leading down to the silence room. He needed to find what Patient 7 had used to shield the core entity. He slid down the shaft. The silence room was different now. The floor was completely covered in a thick, wet sludge, a black, oily substance that smelled of burnt insulation. The rocking chair was gone. Evelyn was gone. The wall where the name Ludwig had been etched was now completely smooth, sealed by a thick layer of dried black substance, looking like hardened tar. The heartbeat was now deafening, originating from deep within the wall. Boom. 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 Alex ignored the primal terror. He needed to find what Patient 7 used to block the sound. He checked the original ventilation duct opening above him. Patient 7 was a maintenance engineer. He wouldn't have just used a piece of paper, whisper, and a chalk line, circled minus. He would have used a permanent block. Alex climbed back up the shaft, into the therapy suite. He examined the therapy suite's own walls. He found a seam in the concrete block where the electrical conduits ran. He grabbed a sledgehammer from his supplies and smashed the concrete. Dust and debris flew. Alex used his hands to pull away the remaining rubble, exposing a cavity deep within the wall. And there, cemented into the very heart of the sanitarium's power grid, was a small, crudely built wooden box, about the size of a shoebox. The box was old and damp, sealed with thick resin. Patient 7, the maintenance man, had placed a permanent block on the heart of the network. Alex grabbed a chisel and began chipping away at the resin. The entire building seemed to moan around him. As the resin cracked, a new sound, sharp and metallic, began to emanate from the box. It was the sound of a single, relentless hammer strike. Clang. 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 It was the sound of something trapped, desperate to break free. Alex finally pried the lid open. The box was lined with copper foil, shielding the contents. Inside, there was a single item, a worn antique hammer. The hammer was small, almost a toy. The head was chipped and ancient, and engraved deeply into the wooden handle, in a tight, meticulous script, was the final name. The original name. It wasn't CHK or Ludwig. It was Oskar. Alex understood immediately. Oskar was the maintenance engineer, Patient 7's real name. He had been so obsessed with containing the heartbeat that he eventually became a patient, leaving his hammer behind as the final seal. The hammer had been pounding against the inside of the box for 60 years. Suddenly, a voice, clearer and more human than any whisper, spoke from behind him. "You found Oskar's tool." Alex spun around. Standing in the therapy suite doorway was Ms. Finch, the head nurse from the Greenlee retreat. She looked calm, professional, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Dr. Thorne carved the symbol with the buckle of his restraints, trying to save himself," she said, stepping into the room. "Evelyn found the lock and the key. But Oskar found the rhythm. The heartbeat." She smiled, a slow, predatory movement of her lips. "I am Ms. Finch. I am the one who spoke the word whisper on the day they transferred Dr. Thorne. I am the one who started the network." She was the original host. Ms. Finch raised her hand, and the thick, black sludge that had covered the silence room floor began to ooze up the ventilation shaft behind her, flowing like a liquid shadow. "You have all the names, Alex. You have the truth. Now you must make the final upload." The ooze solidified, forming a towering, black wall between Alex and his exit. He was sealed in. Ms. Finch stepped closer. "The network requires a final sacrifice. You must use the hammer to pound the name Oskar into your channel. Only then will the heartbeat stop." Alex looked down at the hammer in his hands. He knew if he uploaded the name Oskar, the final, permanent entry point would be opened. He looked at Ms. Finch, who was now smiling wider, her eyes slowly turning to a flat, solid white. The hammer doesn't pound the name in, Alex said, suddenly realizing the final, horrifying irony. The hammer seals the name. He raised the antique hammer, not to upload the name, but to use it against the network itself. Alex stood facing Ms. Finch, the antique hammer, Oskar's hammer, heavy and cool in his hand. The black, tar-like wall of solidified sludge had sealed his only exit. The heartbeat, the boom, 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 of the ancient entity, was violently shaking the room. Ms. Finch, now fully possessed, her eyes pure white and her voice resonating with that seductive, confident tone, took a step toward him. "You have the names, Alex," she hissed. "The hammer is a symbol of containment, yes. But its purpose is to strike. Strike the name, and you complete the circuit. Strike the name, and the heartbeat stops, because it will be inside you." Alex lifted the hammer, not toward her, but toward the closest solid surface, the thick concrete block where he'd found the box. "Oskar's job was maintenance," Alex said, his voice strained. "He didn't just block the names. He sealed the conduit. The hammer's final purpose is not to upload a name, but to destroy the vessel of the network." He swung the hammer with all his force, not at the wall, but at the exposed electrical conduits that ran through the cavity. Crack, sparks erupted. The lights in the therapy suite flickered and died, plunging the room into near-total darkness, illuminated only by the faint light filtering from the broken windows in the observation ward. The black sludge wall behind Ms. Finch wavered, the sound of the heartbeat stuttering. Ms. Finch screamed, a non-human sound of pure power loss. "No! You cannot cut the power! The conduit must remain open!" Alex swung the hammer again, aiming for the main conduit line. Smash! A flash of blinding blue light filled the room, accompanied by the high-pitched sizzle of fried electronics. The entire building went silent. The heartbeat ceased instantly. The black sludge wall behind Ms. Finch collapsed into a puddle of thick, inert tar. Ms. Finch, the host, stumbled backward, her pure white eyes snapping back to a confused, human brown. She blinked, her expression shifting from ancient malice to utter bewilderment. Where am I?" she whispered, clutching her head. The ringing, the awful ringing. Alex knew the host was free, but the entity was only temporarily stunned. He had to assume the entity, now powerless in the physical world, was retreating back into the digital realm, the network. He sprinted out of the therapy suite, running toward the front exit, leaving the confused Ms. Finch behind. Alex reached his car and drove for 2 hours, abandoning his vehicle miles away and stealing a rusty pickup truck from a farm. He needed to disappear completely. He found an abandoned, steel-lined storm shelter beneath a disused silo. He brought only his laptop, a battery pack, and Oskar's hammer. He set up his gear. He had destroyed the physical conduit, but the network was still live, fueled by the 15 million views on his channel. The network's final weapon was not a name, but the mass hysteria he had inadvertently created. He needed to perform the final upload, a counter-upload. He opened his channel's dashboard. He saw a new notification: Midnight Manor channel status compromised. The Doppelganger, the Alex, host, Echo, had managed to use the brief window of electrical failure to upload a new video. The thumbnail was a still image of Alex's face, screaming. The title: Ludwig Speaks, the Final Truth of the Whisper Network. The views were climbing astronomically: 1 million. 2 million. 5 million. Alex opened the video. The entire screen was filled with the pure black smear of the door. There was no visual, only audio, the gentle, persuasive voice of the Doppelganger, whispering the same name over and over, luring millions of people into the network. Ludwig. Say the name. Open the way for Ludwig. Alex had to delete the video. But he was locked out of his own channel. The Doppelganger had changed the password, securing the channel for the entity. He frantically typed in code after code, desperately trying to bypass the security. Nothing worked. He grabbed Oskar's hammer. He realized the hammer was not a physical weapon, nor a code. It was a symbolic seal. He placed the hammer on the keyboard, directly over the delete key. He held down the power button on his laptop, initiating a forced shutdown. Then, he reached out and touched the head of Oskar's hammer. "Oskar, maintenance engineer," Alex whispered, his voice shaking. "I'm not going to delete the file. I'm going to seal the conduit." He pressed the power button again, bringing the laptop back online. As the screen flashed the initial loading screen, Alex held the hammerhead firmly over the D key, the key for delete, and pressed down hard. The operating system loaded. The video was still there, but when he opened the video's details, the title had been changed. The Doppelganger's title was gone. It was replaced with a single, simple word, etched into the file name by the power of the seal, Oskar. He had sealed the video file, renaming it with the maintenance man's name, the symbol of final containment. He couldn't delete the video, but he had rendered it inert. The whispers in the comments section stopped instantly. The view counter froze at 8,000,000. Alex sat back, exhausted, staring at the screen. The network was crippled. He had cut the main power and sealed the final message. Suddenly, a final message popped up on his laptop screen, not from the network, but from the operating system itself. An error message. Error. File named Oskar is inactive. Please delete all remaining echo files. Below the error, a list of files appeared. Hundreds of them. Each one named after a single person. Echo, Evelyn Echo, Alistair Thorne Echo, Patient 7, Oskar, Echo, the Blackwood Sanitarium Echo, Midnight Manor, and the very last one, Echo, Ludwig, host. Alex looked at the list. He realized the network was not destroyed. It was still alive, waiting in the code. He had to delete the source file and all its echoes, or the cycle would simply begin again. He grabbed the hammer, ready to use it as a symbolic delete button. But he knew he couldn't hit every key on the keyboard simultaneously. He needed a final, physical act of deletion, one that would wipe the entire digital connection clean. Alex stared at the long list of file names, the digital echoes of the network, on his screen. He had neutralized the master key, Ludwig, and sealed the final upload, Oskar, but the roots of the contamination remained, ready to sprout a new host. He had to delete the entire list simultaneously. The network was a digital infection. It required a physical action of finality. He picked up Oskar's hammer. The small, antique tool felt heavy, imbued with 60 years of silent containment. He looked at the error message again. Please delete all remaining echo files. The only way to execute a mass deletion was to hit the physical delete key and the modifier keys, Ctrl/CMD+A, simultaneously, followed by a final enter key to confirm. The force of his hammer swing would need to be perfectly calibrated, a maintenance man's precise strike. He positioned the laptop on the floor of the storm shelter. He positioned the hammerhead over the 4 required keys, Ctrl-A, delete, and enter. Alex took a deep, shuddering breath. This was the final upload, the final act of maintenance. Before he could strike, a message notification popped up on the screen, overriding the error message. It was a single line of text, written in the same crude, pencil script as the original whisper paper. You missed the first echo. The host is the only way out. The message vanished. The echo list reappeared, but one name was added to the top, highlighted in glowing red text, Echo. Alex, the sealer. He was the final echo, the final piece of the network's digital cache. If he deleted the list, he deleted himself from the world, leaving only the network's memory. The air in the metal shelter suddenly turned ice cold. The rhythmic heartbeat of the ancient entity, silenced by the power cut, returned, not from the walls, but from directly beneath his spine. Thump. 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 The entity was in the shelter with him. Alex knew he was running out of time. He raised the hammer high above his head. Oskar's hammer doesn't delete the network, Alex yelled, his voice echoing off the steel walls. It seals the conduit. He brought the hammer down in a final, powerful, and precise arc clang. The laptop's screen instantly went dark. The sound was deafening, the impact jarring his bones. He had successfully struck the 4 keys simultaneously. The heartbeat beneath him instantly vanished. The cold lifted. Silence returned. Alex waited, heart hammering in his chest, for the inevitable final sign. He carefully lifted the hammer. The laptop's keyboard was shattered, the keys crushed into the circuit board. He hit the power button. Nothing. The laptop was dead. The conduit was physically destroyed. Alex sat in the silent, dark bunker, listening only to his own ragged breathing. He had won. The network was gone. He slowly gathered his gear, a dead laptop, a small, antique hammer, and the knowledge of the names ZHK and Ludwig, now permanently sealed from the world. He climbed out of the storm shelter, into the quiet light of dawn. 6 months later. The Midnight Manor YouTube channel remains exactly as Alex left it. The video titled Oskar is still pinned, frozen at 8 million views, the comments silent, the name a digital seal. The channel is inactive, the host gone. Alex is working as a maintenance engineer in a small, isolated research facility in the Alaskan wilderness. The work is physically demanding, lonely, and absolutely quiet. He wears thick gloves and a utility belt every day. He trusts silence, and he trusts maintenance. One afternoon, he is tasked with repairing a ventilation unit in the facility's lowest sublevel. He pulls out his toolkit. As he works, he notices a small, almost invisible mark etched into the cold metal of the air duct, near the power coupling. It is a faint, crudely drawn circle with a line through it. The circle minus marker. He stops working. The familiar, cold dread creeps up his neck. He looks at his hands, covered in grease and dust. He is wearing his thick work gloves, the knuckles of which are reinforced with tiny metal plates. He realizes that the symbol on the air duct is not a warning from the network. It is an impression. The circle minus was etched into the metal by the metal plate on his own glove, when he accidentally leaned against the duct while working. Alex sighs, relieved, and pulls his hand away. The paranoia is the hardest thing to silence. He reaches for his toolbox to continue the repair, and then he freezes. He looks at his utility belt. He is missing one item. He finds it sitting on the shelf above the air duct, placed neatly on a small square of clean, white paper. The item is the antique hammer. Oskar's hammer, and written on the paper, in elegant, flowing script, is a single, new word. Welcome. Alex is suddenly seized by a terrifying memory. He destroyed the digital conduit, but he never actually deleted the final file. He never used the hammer to strike the final enter key. He had merely sealed the code with his own name. The network was still there, dormant, waiting for a new signal. He looks back at the air duct. The circle minus mark is still there, and from deep within the silent ventilation shaft, he hears a sound that is not a whisper, not a hum, and not a heartbeat. It is a low, faint squeak creak. The sound of a rocking chair, miles away, starting to move. Alex reaches out and picks up the hammer. He is the only maintenance man left. And the network is about to make its next upload.